Hello, everybody. Back again to do a little bit of focus on some bands from Rusted Metal book, Northwest Hard Rock and Heavy Metal Guide, spanning 1970 to 1995, covering the whole Northwest, basically. Um, did just Metal Church from Letter M is obviously had quite a few releases, and we're doing a book on them, so it kind of made sense to split that up. But back with the rest of the bands, try to crank through this one because there's a lot in M, and I think we can fit a bunch in there. So first one is a cool band from Everett, Washington, Mace. It's their first record from 1985 on Coma, which was Jeff Gilbert's label after Ground Zero. Kind of spawned off on his own thing, did a few records as we talked about before, and another release. It's the second album from Mace in 1987, Evil and Good. This one actually came out on Medusa with Everrat, with Dave Portnow put this one out with Medusa distribution. Mace was like an early crossover band, formed in 82 actually, had a demo tape in 83, 3 songs, they were 3-piece. One of the tracks, Marching Saprophytes, ended up on the Metal Massacre 5 from Metal Blade that Metal Church and Fate's Warning were also on. They had that track also appears on the Northwest Metal Fest comp that I talked about a couple times already. They were kind of a mix. I don't know if you can see it, but there's a picture of them with my hand is in the way. Down low there where they're a 3-piece, and they became a 4-piece I think just after the Slayer show they opened up for, or maybe they'd already added Vern White on bass by then. But Vern kind of had a little more punk look. He was in the Bondage Boys pre that. Shane White, the drummer, no relation, had a mohawk oftentimes or a skinhead. Whereas Dave Hillis, the guitarist, and Kurt Verhey, the vocalist, looked more like metal guys. So definitely their look was crossover. It was definitely early thrash with hardcore punk, a lot of fusion of that. They fit very well on a lot of bills with Accused and NME and Metal Church and Slayer and many different bands. Unfortunately, they kind of changed it up after the second album, and they went kind of glammy, and it didn't really work. So I think what happened to a couple other bands that tried to go more commercial or more that direction, Culprit, Wild Dogs, some of those just didn't fly. People wanted that aggressive stuff, and the seas had kind of parted as far as those styles. So the next band I was going to talk about was Malice. A lot of people know them as an LA band, but they originally formed in Portland. All Portland guys except, and even the first drummer, Pete Laughlin, was an Oregon guy, or Vancouver, Washington, I think. They did demos in Portland at Recording Associates, ended up getting on this first Metal Massacre compilation, which is just a red vinyl reissue, which just came out a little while back, which is pretty cool. And they ended up moving down to LA as well after they had some success playing down there and being on this compilation with a couple tracks. Members of Fire Eye, Pete Laughlin and Mark Bain, the bass player who I interviewed for Rusted Metal, really nice guy. Mick Zane played with Matt McCourt and other people in the scene. Jay Reynolds was also involved in some of that. He was on the Ravers record. Singer James Neal was in a local band too, and I forgot the name. How good am I? I should have wrote it down. God. But first record, here's a reissue. Rock Candy Records did a while back. It's pretty cool, remastered and everything. This originally came out in 85. It was kind of about half and half, 2 different producers. Michael Wagner produced half of them, was the demos, but unfortunately couldn't finish it when they finally got the deal or whatever, and so they had Ashley Howe come in from work with Uriah Heep and other bands. The second record is License to Kill. This is produced by Max Norman. Really good record. Um, they had an EP as well. This is also a God. I got light right in the middle of this. Um, but yeah, so this is some demos, kind of a bootleg thing. It's kind of cool. Um, Next would probably be Malfunction, Andy Wood's band. This is a compilation that came out about 5 years after he died, unfortunately, in 1990. Collect a lot of their demos and compilation stuff and so on. Loose Groove put this out, which was Stone Gossard's label and still is, I believe. So I'd probably connect that up with Mother Love Bone, which was Andrew's band after Malfunction. It was members of Green River, Jeff Ament and Stone, um, with Greg Gilmore on drums, and I'm forgetting the other guy's name off the top of my head that was the bass player. Alex Vincent, I think. Is that the Green River guy? But yeah, so Mother Love Bone definitely built up some popularity. They got signed to Mercury, kind of had their own little label, Stardog. First EP, Apple, was really successful. They were primed to be, break out and be big, and it was kind of the big, um, you know, hype around them and stuff. And then unfortunately, Andrew, just before the record, the full length album came out, he overdosed and died. This is a CD release shortly, a couple years later on, I believe, where it had the album EP and like a couple unreleased tracks, kind of cool. But yeah, Mother Love Bone especially, but I like Malfunction a lot too. Cool bands, definitely pretty interesting stuff. Um, is Mayhem CD reissue of their album from '85 or '86. I forget when it originally came out. '86 originally was um, this. So they had a demo tape first with a different singer, Nick Demise, I think is how you say his name. Featured Steve Hanford, drummer for later for Poison Idea. Eric Olson, who played with Poison Idea. Craig Lauer, who also did. An early speed thrash band. They opened up for Exciter and Metal Church and different bands at the time. Bass player from Glacier, Tim Proctor started out with these guys, and he came up with their logo, which is like angels, where you can flip it over and it says the same thing either way, which is kind of neat. Which was his influence, was Angel too, he told me, for the logo. By the time this was done, Matt McCourt from Wild Dogs had joined up with him, so it was that lineup of Craig, Matt, Eric, and Steve Hanford, and so they did this record, which I think was, I can't remember what it was originally on, for a label, somebody overseas. But yeah, so those guys were pretty cool, thrash metal thing, definitely. And let's see, next is Medusa. This actually just came out. They had a tape and a CD EP at the time, and I believe this is a bit, kind of collects both of them together. Female fronted metal band, kind of in the Doro, Pesh, um, DC LaCroix kind of realm. Pretty cool. Um, Litza Georgiitis was the singer. She was the sister of Billy, the guitarist, who was way back the day was in Snowblind, with a couple of the Rottweiler guys. So that's pretty cool. Let's see, Mentors would probably be next. They were originally formed in Seattle. I thought I'd show this, which is this El Duce solo album that features the Coven guys, which is kind of my favorite of the stuff. I know it's technically not the Mentors, but it's kind of cool. Reissue of that. Midnight Vice. These guys had a comp track back in the day, a new Renaissance comp. Richmond, BC guys, I believe. Sandy Hyde was in the band, who I interviewed for Rusted Metal. He's in Pretty Boy Floyd, which became Tommy Floyd, and a number of other bands over the years. But this is pretty cool, all their demos and stuff. Heaven and Hell Records did that a while back. That's kind of a neat one. Collecting their stuff. Let's see what's next here. I missed a couple MAs. Malevolence. This was I think collected a couple of their demos from early 90s. British Columbia band as well. Um, they recorded Fiasco Brothers Studio, which a lot of thrash and metal bands and stuff recorded up there. Um, Supreme Echo that I talked about before for Cradle guy Jason did this record, which is pretty cool. These guys were really neat. Max Planck. They had a tape back in the day, and with like a split 7-inch with Kill the Core that I mentioned. A trio, female bass player, and the guitarist singer would trade off vocals. She sang on a couple songs. Drummer, killer 3-piece, kind of epic metal stuff in sort of the Brocus Helm, Manila Road kind of realm, a little bit of Euro type feel to it as far as Swedish metal and stuff. Kind of interesting stuff. This was a reissue. Had a bonus 7-inch. There's a couple other bonus tracks on the record. It's got a picture and a little patch there. And these guys were Port Orchard guys, I believe. Played shows at Guerrilla Gardens and stuff like that back in the day, so they were pretty cool. Well, they also had a track on the first Metal Meltdown compilation. So that's kind of cool. Let's see what else. Mission of Christ, late 80s thrash band from Sydney, BC. This is kind of cool. It's a reissue some of their, I think the record they had, and then some demo stuff, little 7-inch. Supreme Echo guys, this again, that's kind of cool. Well, let's see, this is not an official release, but Mojo Hand was the pre-TKO band, kind of morphed out of Mojo Hand. They were kind of a hard rock and blues band, started '69, so they're kind of an early one in the picture for Northwest hard rock and metal. It was a 4-piece. Singer ended up getting arrested for draft evasion, and so they kind of tried to retool with different people. Rick Pierce ends up joining the band from TKO, the guitarist, and then eventually Brad Sinsel and Tony Borco joined up with the drummer and bassist Daryl Segenza, the drummer, or Daryl Segenza, the drummer, excuse me, and Mark Seidenberg, the bassist. These are some demos they recorded in '77. So never know. Maybe some of that'll come out at some point. Let's see, who else do we have? Manchild was an Oregon band. They started out kind of as a 5-piece. Troy Stutzman from Roulette plays in Wild Dogs and some recent reunions in a bunch of different bands. 6 Foot Underground. He was in the first lineup, then they kind of retooled it, and Singer had a new lineup that ended up being the track used on Pacific Metal Project. This also has Myth and Mistrust as well. And Mistrust had Jeff LaRue from Culprit on vocals. Here's the original cassette and vinyl copy. And had a couple of the guys from Rottweiler in the first incarnation of that was on Northwest Metal Fest. Tim Wolf on bass, Mike Winston on guitar, along with Owen Wright on guitar, second guitar, and Chris Godey on drums, who went on to be in another band I'll talk about in a minute. So that one's kind of a tough one to find. Unfortunately, Jeff Gilbert lost his distribution with Enema, and this one didn't get the push and stuff that the other ones he had did. We ended up reissuing it recently, Northwest Metalworks, with some unreleased demos, 3 unreleased demos from 1987. It's an original promo photo, and a little test pressing. Everybody seems to have liked that one so far quite a bit. Let's see. My Eye, which was Steve and Kurt from Overlord, post Overlord. They have an early proto grunge band as well. Kind of a little more experimental and interesting. Had the dude from the Trids as well, which was kind of like a Hanoi Rocks, New York Dolls, glammy band that played Lake Hills and stuff. But My Eye, they did this single, had a couple comp tracks. Charles Peterson early photo. This is on CZ Records, so that's kind of cool. What else we got? My Remains, thrash band from Washington. Um, just recently had, I don't know, a year or two, a couple years ago, this came out. Lost Realm guy in Portugal's guys. Which was their sets of demos, which is pretty cool. Collected. They did vinyl as well. I got around here somewhere. And then let's see. Uh, My Sister's Machine. Chris and Owen from Mistrust went on to do this band. Um, Really cool band. Kind of like Alice in Chains meets Soundgarden. Definitely on the heavier edge of the grunge thing. Um, the singer Nick Pollock actually was in an earlier version of Alice in Chains where he played guitar when Lane sang, but they had a lot of harmonies too, much like Lane Staley and Jerry Cantrell did later on. Diva was their first on Caroline, um, and then they got picked up for an offshoot of East West Electra with um, kind of a cool, really cool band that should have got a lot more exposure, I think, and done a lot better. But they did some good touring with different people. They had Tommy Manus from Alice Cooper's camp managed them, and they had some good tours with White Zombie and some different bands. And then these are not official ones either, but Myth with Jeff Tate. I kind of be remiss if I didn't talk about them having doing a Queensryche book. This is some demos and live stuff at a Lake Hills show. I think the Headbangers Ball 82 might have been the one. Some cool pictures. Somebody made this little bootleg I got many years ago. Unreleased album from 86 with Brent Young, who was the brother of Terry James Young from Rail, was the singer of the band. I guess this kind of got shopped around and it didn't get picked up, unfortunately, and it got shelved, but it's a really good full album. I was fortunate to be able to get a hold of a copy of this. Hopefully someday Kelly Gray will put that stuff out. We've offered. So, let's see. So not metal definitely, but pretty heavy. I'd have to mention Mudhoney. I always like these guys a lot. They're kind of a garage punk type of thing. Definitely MC5 Stooges meets Black Sabbath kind of vibe. There's a Super Fuzz Big Muff EP plus their first early singles and stuff. Kind of a cool CD. This is a vinyl reissue. From a few years back as a poster and stuff. It's pretty cool of their first full length. And let's see. Pamela Moore, of course, with Sister Mary, sang on Queensryche Records, Operation Mindcrime and stuff, and has performed with them a few times live and stuff. Signed by her as well. She dated back to the 70s in some different bands she fronted, and then she did these couple solo records in the early 80s. They're kind of more poppy dance stuff, not hard rock. She went into that a bit later on after Queensryche. It's a cool Portland band, Mr. Nice Guy. They're kind of in the sequel sort of realm, or Heats, kind of power pop stuff. AOR. That was pretty cool. They had some radio play at the time. This is a neat little gatefold record that they put out themselves, I believe. It's kind of hard to find now. Then I was going to mention a few other bands. There was a couple Mad Hatters, Oregon and Washington. One was thrash. I think one was a little more straightforward metal. Magi, 70s hard rock band. Singles are kind of light, but live they did a lot of great covers of hard rock bands and stuff, and some heavier stuff. I just didn't end up. We were supposed to have a record deal, just never happened. So it's likely we would have seen some of that stuff on there. Mama Troll was a heavy band during the grunge kind of period in Washington. Marauder was a BC band that was pretty cool. Masquerade, kind of a hair glam metal band. A couple different singers. Wayne Spell, who was in a couple different bands, fronted them for a while, and then Sullivan Big was their singer, who also sang for Savitar and a couple other things, and now he does big time entertainment. Books a lot of cruises and casinos and different festivals and things. And I had a nice chat with him for the Queensryche book. He was really cool. Mendenhall was an Oregon metal band, early 90s kind of range. Um, let's see, Mercenary, late 70s, early 80s band. Scott Palmerton fronted them, that went on to be Q5. In fact, this was a band right before Q5. MIA, which was, I think, kind of an early thrash speed metal band that played shows with Mace and Accused and different bands at the time. Mildstone was the late 70s four piece, three brothers. Competed in the Battle of Bands of '79's hard rock band. Mirror Mirror was an Oregon metal band that was pretty cool. I saw them Starry Night with like Coven and Cruella and a bunch of other bands. Teacher's Pet. They evolved out of Sacred Rain, which is a metal band, had a 7-inch that's kind of rare. I can't remember. I think Mirror had at least some demos that they had on tape and stuff. Molotov Cocktail was a Oregon thrash band. A cool early to mid 70s band, Mondo Bando, was originally a Spokane band, migrated out to Seattle in the mid 70s. Brad Butler from Sabotage joined them on drums. They kind of had a Kiss makeup kind of thing going, playing pretty heavy, influenced by Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Kiss and stuff. And then they got a transgender person who was started fronting the band named Electra Blue. And she kind of turned it more towards a punk direction. They kind of went that direction. It was kind of cool. She ended up being the sound person for the Lude for many years and went down to San Francisco with them. More and More was kind of a hair metal band, played Riviera in a lot of those places at the time. They had some demos they recorded. Morpheus, also from Washington, was a cool thrash metal band. They had a split 7-inch. I showed the Accused split 7-inch. They were on the other side of that. They played a lot of shows with Accused and a lot of those bands at the time, Coven and stuff. So I think that's it. Mud Bucket. I forgot about them. So our good friend Eric Starr, as he went by, Eric Layton, had a band early 90s called Mud Bucket that did some, I think, a handful of demos. Dave Portnow from Everrat and Subcore has Pig Records. He put out their demos on like a 10-inch lathe cut record, which is kind of neat. I've got it around somewhere, and then a CD too, which I forgot to grab. But yeah, I want to give a shout out to the late Eric, very nice guy, big collector and scenester guy, very cool, well liked in the scene. I got to meet him a few times, and he came to different signings and stuff. So there you go. I think that's it. I probably forgot some, but get Rusted Metal and they're in there. If we miss somebody, it's probably very few. All right, we'll see you next week. It'll be letter A.